What a pleasure to have you in the park today, Joan. We are here at Something to Talk About Mudgeeraba, which is our Friday night interview and music in the park. It's very exciting. Whenever we gather together, we try to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet, the Kumameri people. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. But it's not just about First Nations elders. The First Nations elders would be wanting to pay respect to elders just like you, elders from our community, people who are leaders for many generations, and your pioneering family as well. So we would want to pay our respect to elders. That's what we do in Mudgeeraba. It's something that's quite precious to us. I want to thank tonight Dan and Britt, who are playing a little bit later on, and also Living Events, who have been the stage managers and curators of some of our music and organised our stage and everything like that. It's really good. The Lions Club of Mudgeeraba is our community organisation who is kind of sponsoring the event. We've provided them a grant to help us, and tonight we've got Brian from the Lions Club. They're a wonderful community partner who have been in the area for many, many years. And it's great to have them partnering with us as we come into a busy season where groups like the Lions Club make our community richer and help those in need. I also want to thank Bookness. This beautiful brown couch is from Bookness, our favourite new bookshop in Mudgeeraba, and they've donated it to us as long as we give them a plug, which I think is good. Some great Christmas presents up there, Joan, if you like a bit of reading material. Yeah. There are 3 reasons why we do summertime, something to talk about. The first reason is economic. We're hoping that people will come into the park on a Friday night and enjoy a picnic, patronising one of our, the burger joint, Juna's, or one of the pizza shops, or the fish and chips, and have a picnic in the park. Or they'll come and enjoy some music and then duck out to a restaurant later on. So it's an economic reason, the first. The second is we think it's really important to capture some of the history behind our local area. And there are so many new families out here, and we want them to kind of have recording these just so we can capture some of that history so people can learn a bit more about their local area. Yep. And the last is social. We want people to gather together. We think our community is richer when we're inclusive and gather people in the park, and we enjoy a meal in the park together. So later on today we'll be meeting someone new. It's always a bit of a test to meet someone new. People will come here with friends, but we always try and make sure they meet someone new. Okay. They're the reasons we do it. But let's get started, Joan. Good. Tell us about yourself. Where were you born and what was your childhood like?
Well, my people come from Gilston, Nerang. They're original settlers here, the Duncans and the Zimmermans and several others, because that's where we come from. I grew up in Nerang and Mudgeeraba. I went to school in a 3-teacher school at Nerang, and I came to Mudgeeraba when I was about 9, and so I went to school where the old school is up on the hill where the special school is. Yep. And that was a real eye-opener, because before that I had to go to a 1-teacher school at Upper Mudgeeraba.
Upper Mudgeeraba?
Upper Mudgeeraba, because there was no way of us getting down from Paradise Valley, from Austinville Road, down to Mudgeeraba. Huh. No. Unless Dad would have driven us down, and I don't think that was likely.
So the school in Upper Mudgeeraba?
Yeah, so there's a school around about where near the golf club? Yeah. This side of the golf club, where the cup of tea, afternoon tea place is, high tea place. So that's where I went there, and then went to Mudgeeraba school, and then I stayed home on the farm. We had a dairy. Huh. And because it was a big family, and I really couldn't. My sister went to high school and she boarded. You had to board because it wasn't a high school here. So she did that, and I stayed home until I was 19 or something. And my dad came home one day and he said, "Joni, I have a job for you." And I thought he'd sold me out. I wasn't happy because I was so shy. It was terrible. The general store, which was just here. Yes,
just behind us, right here.
Yeah, just behind us. I got that job there, and I was petrified. And I've been at school for so many years. I had to write dockets. We sent the groceries up in a sugar bag on the milk truck to take. They were all delivered, the bread, the mail, everything else. So yes, it was pretty basic. And from then on, Mudgeeraba sort of was I grew up in a community. Yes. That's basically what I grew up in, a community of people from all walks of life, mostly farmers. So you felt reasonably secure, and there were so many social things in the town because you had a dance every weekend, every month in the hall, which is up there. And the show, which was there as well, that was where the pavilion was. Wood chops were there, where the wood choppers is. So that whole community worked with one another.
Yeah.
You know, and they were farmers that came in. Like my dad was the MC and he was the musician, and everybody put like the lions and everybody else. They've all volunteering, you know, volunteering to do all these things. So. Yeah, so that's how I grew up here.
So you worked in the general store, which was just behind this stage, right here. Yep. What did the village look like in those days? What was it? Obviously, it's pretty busy. There's cars coming through right now. What was it like back in the day? We'll say back in the day.
The only time it was really busy, one day Rudds brought their cattle down from Tallow. Right through the middle of town here with the dogs and all chasing them, and the cows went up the hill there, they went up by the hall, they were everywhere. It was just so funny. But there wasn't anything...
So it was busy, but busy with cows, not cars.
Just cows, yeah, not cars. There was only 2 houses over there in Swan Lane, and there was a farm behind there. We've always had a little ES&A bank here, the school, the bakery, the hotel. That's a garage. Across the road was a cafe.
Yes.
And the post office.
And the post office.
And there was the general store, and up the hill next to it was the butcher shop.
Yes.
And then the hall.
Now,
that was it.
Back then, you were a Duncan, and you talked about the Rudds. Now, your families were they close? The Rudds and the Duncans were close families back in the days, or the Rudds were just kind of known as the cattle graziers from the Tallow?
Well, no, they lived across the road here, across where behind the hall and back over onto Glen.
Which is now Robina.
Whatever they call it, yeah. So that's their property, and Tallow was part of it. And we had our dairy farm up at Alstonville Road. But my dad and grandfather and Jack's, that fellow over there.
He's a good-looking fellow over there. I quite like that guy.
They would have known one another all the time because Dad, he drove cattle and they drove them through, and he'd pick up cattle from all the different places. So, yeah, they knew one another,
Yeah. Look, I want to ask a little bit about a special season for you. And, you know, we've advertised it a little bit. I'm a bit excited to be meeting Miss Hinterland 1965. So tell us a little bit about what was the journey like to become Miss Hinterland? What was it like in those days?
It was really different now. You have Miss Showgirl and all those things, and there's a sort of a money making, and you have to do this and that. It was basically it was Belle of the Ball originally. For the first one, they devised it. Somebody had a good idea to there was 11 entrants the year I won. From all the different districts, from Coomera to Currumbin to Numinbah, Beechmont, Nerang, everybody.
And all of that was the hinterland?
And that was all hinterland. That's all our hinterland. And so I was Miss Mudgeeraba.
Goodness gracious.
And that was the first. That was the first. The
kind of stage in the process.
That was the stage of it. Then Russell Hince, who was part of Dairy Queen, the factory, and the MLA at the time, he decided that they would take it in. The first one was held in the Mudgeeraba Hall. The next one they took to the RSL Hall at Southport.
Wow.
Which was a big thing for people to have to go to Southport to go to a ball. But everyone was very happy to do it. 400 people turned up.
Gosh.
And so when we went in there, and the RSL had organised it all, and when we got there, the process was that you usually just danced around the floor, and they chose who they thought should get it. No, they decided in their wisdom this time they would have a panel.
Right.
And it had Thea Dillon, Thea Williams, and people like that. And Joe Pinter, he was the manager of Associated Minerals, all sorts of people. There's about 6 people up there. And this was such a surprise to us, and to me in particular. I had to actually walk across the stage on my own, across to this judging panel and speak with them.
Oh my gosh.
And so that was
you must have been petrified.
It was a bit scary. But anyway, yeah.
What did you talk about? What did they ask you?
I can't remember. I would have been blindly sort of. Yeah, but no, that was really good. And we had the prize. I had a nice prize at a week at Port Macquarie.
Okay.
Given to us by the Mayor of Port Macquarie.
Wow.
A week at his motel, and we went down there, and he had lined up for me a reception, a luncheon.
Gosh.
And with the Lady Mayoress and whatnot, and then an interview on the radio.
Wow.
And they asked me to speak about the green behind the gold. There you go.
Back in the day.
Miss Hinterland. Yep.
So in the late 60s, we're talking about the green behind the gold.
Yeah.
What were your responsibilities as Miss Hinterland?
No, nothing much.
Nothing much, just wear the crown.
Come to the next one and give it away.
So was there anything? Obviously, there's the panel discussion, the judging panel. But was there dancing, or what was there a contest, or did you have to? Yeah, what did you have to do?
Well, they would have judged. They would have watched you dance for a start.
Of course.
And would you believe, Leving Studios that are doing this the thing? Lan's Uncle Barry was my partner.
Wow! Oh my gosh!
So that was So
was Barry a good dancer?
Yes, he was. That's why I asked him.
That's great.
Yeah, and they would have asked me just where I worked and what I did, and things like that, I suppose. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so yeah.
There you go. There you go.
And then the last year, the year that I gave it, that I went back to the second year, I actually gave my sister second prize, thing. So that was nice. Yeah.
What was family like in those days? Your families were quite close. You talk about how your affection for your sister. Were you guys competitive, or were you?
No, very close.
Very close.
Oh, Kathy and I were just the best of mates, just the best of friends, and it really upset me that she had to go away to 2 years to school. She boarded away at school. We're still we're all really good friends, my families, so yeah. Yeah, so no, that was, I was fortunate enough to have such a lovely mother and father. So
yeah.
Yeah, and very sociable people. Like my dad he was a Progress Association, the school committee, the show committee. He was on just about everything around.
What was the show like in those days?
Oh, the show was, the pavilion was the hall, and you walked into that hall and it was full of flowers and cooking and all sorts of things. It was beautiful.
Wow.
Miss Labour, Elsie Labour, and some of the ladies, they would be looking after the flower section. And those mothers, the wives of everybody, and like I'm talking about volunteers, they would cook for luncheon. They would serve a luncheon the old hall had a lovely veranda on it with French doors. And they went out and you had your luncheon there, and so that means they would have cooked and made sandwiches, and then at night for the ball they would have come back with cakes and more sandwiches.
You never had any lack of things to eat?
Ball, no, and there's a show ball that was. It had horse sports on the flat down where the Coles shopping centre is now. That was Rudd's property. Wood chops where the wood choppers are. There was a spare block between the butcher shop and the general store, and that the kids would have running races and all sorts of things like that. Yeah. So it was contained up there.
Yeah. So someone from the local area will sometimes drive down Swanton Drive and they'll see a park on Swanton Drive called Woodlands Park. Yeah. And I remember you and I talked a little bit about that.
We did.
What was Woodlands Park like back? This is the area between Somerset College and Swanton Drive is where Woodlands Park is. What was it like being a dairy, a daughter of a dairy farmer?
That was Jack's farm, Jack's people's farm, the Rudd's farm. It was they ploughed the flat there.
Yep.
If it rained a lot, after the rain, mushrooms would come up in the paddock, and people would come out with old tubs, you know, they're old washing tubs.
To collect mushrooms?
To collect mushrooms. That's how many mushrooms would grow on that flat.
Wow.
And they had big red dairy cows, very different to what our cows were up in the hills. We had Guernseys and Jerseys and different type of farming. Yeah.
And did you milk cows as a young girl? And you and your sister would... Did you have brothers?
Yes.
So how many children were in your family?
There's seven, but my brothers are a lot younger.
7 children in your family? Did their parents not know what was causing it?
They must have liked one another.
They must have, I'm sure. Maybe it was cold nights as well. Goodness gracious. So after you were Miss Hinterland and obviously went through that process, what did you do? You've been here ever since. What was your life like after? Did you ever leave, or have you always been in the area?
I've always been around here. When I worked at the shop, the year that I won Miss Hinterland, the manager that was here, the fellow who had bought the general store, also had a delicatessen in Surfers Paradise.
Yes.
And they asked me to work in there at the delicatessen, which was totally different to what we've ever known. You know, all the different foods and things, and in Surfers Paradise with all the visitors that came up. And,
yes.
So that was a really great experience for me, actually. It got me out and seeing a different way of life. And it was good.
I want to touch on the idea of how important traditions are to our local area. The heritage traditions of our local area are quite precious. Do you think it's possible to embrace both change and traditions together? What sort of things?
I think you have to be very careful. I think Mudgeerbar's been very lucky that it's where it is set. It is set in a something that's been able to keep it together. And the people in Mudgeerbar seem to, because there's always been so much community and volunteering, everything else, I think that's, but you have to be careful, and that has been careful in Mudgeerbar to maintain some of that feeling of the Mudgeerbar, because of the gardens, of course, for a start, that just absolutely tops it all. The change, you can do that because they've still kept up. See, the Mudgeerbar show is just so big, and like that's just amazing the way that's just kicked on and done so well. We've got a museum.
Tell us about the museum. What's it like?
Well, I'm the president.
I know you're the president. I know. I know that.
But it's fantastic because we gathered up the remnants of what was left of Mudgeerbar before people started to shift everything out, knock it down, whatever.
We've got the old Nerang railway station.
The Nerang railway station's there. We've got Oakie House from the farm out on Springbrook Road. We have the Tallabudgera Jail. Franklin House, John Franklin's house. He was a councillor here, one part of it, John. He was our big brother. He was such a lovely fellow. He was really nice. So it has been protected here, and I think it's definitely worked well. Yeah.
I want to touch on something personal. So you're a Duncan and you've married a Rudd. How did you and Jack meet?
At a younger set. I started a younger set group for the young people, and we used to, Barry Hintz and I would borrow our father's cars, and they would let us drive down each week. We'd borrow each father's car, and we came down. And actually, part of that younger set, I can remember, you talk about volunteering. Bob McMaster, who had the hotel at the time.
Which is Wallaby Bob McMaster.
Wallaby Bob. He came to us at one of our younger set meetings, and he asked Jack and I, would we go up, because they had a committee to start the pool, the Mudgeerbar pool.
Wow.
Yeah, so we were part of that. They let us young people in to see what we thought.
What was the pool like when you, what sort of feedback did you offer them to build the pool?
It's all
dig a hole, fill it with water.
So long ago. I'm just saying that yes, it would be wonderful. We would use it, stuff like that, I suppose. Yeah.
That's great. Now the pool now is right next to the Pannett's family bakery, and the bakery's been there for a long time. Do you ever remember going to the bakery and getting nice sweet things?
Yeah. Oh, cream buns. Goodness gracious me.
I think they still have
Who
the
doesn't
same.
like a cream bun? And And the kids used to pick up the bread for their mothers and whatnot, and they'd break the bread in half. There'd be 2 halves to it, and they'd eat the middle out of it before it got home half the time.
Oh my gosh. Kids are still cheeky.
But opposite that, where the pool is now, that was just a big, they called it the police yard.
Yes.
Had some beautiful big, huge box trees and things in it. Yeah, it was lovely.
Well, I mean, Wallaby Bob McMaster owned what is now the Wallaby Hotel, and the Panitz family still own the bakery. It's actually really quite precious that we've been able to keep some of those things the way they always were. I wanted to touch on an important thing, and as Miss Hinterland 1965, and obviously a woman who has continue to volunteer and be a leader in our community. What sort of advice would you offer for young women from our local area right now who are pursuing their dreams and ambitions?
Well, one of my main things that I was going to say was don't be afraid to volunteer. Don't be afraid to volunteer for it, even if it's only your tuck shop at school. It's very liberating. You join in a community once again, you make a community of the school or whatever. And volunteering is quite important, I think, too. Otherwise, my dad had a saying when we were young, and he told me when I had to go to work at the shop or do something, and I've recalled it several times, he'd say, if you're asked to do something, have a go. Because he said you never know, you might just like it.
Ah, that's great. Look, I think that's a lovely note to end on. So good. Joan, what a pleasure to have you with us today. Congratulations on winning Miss Hinterland back in 1965, but there's so much, I know, but there is so much more that you have brought to our community since then, and it's wonderful to have you still so involved as the president of the Gold Coast Hinterland Heritage Museum. I know that they're open from 10 until 2 every Sunday, so if you ever want to have a longer chat with Joan, you can come and have a scone as well. They're very nice, scones with jam and cream. I can personally attest to how lovely the marmalade is up there.
Yes. And
my wife will, she doesn't like marmalade that much. She always has a bit of a heckle every time I have marmalade on toast. But what a pleasure it's been to have you with us today. Thank you for coming out, and thanks for being part of something to talk about.
Well, thank you very much for asking me, Glenn. It's a pleasure.